Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Dating After a Divorce podcast. I'm super excited for this episode. I have my client, Linda, here to share her story. And she met her boyfriend in 2022. We're recording this April of 2023. And I remember I was joking around about how she got a boyfriend for Christmas of 2022, which is kind of fun. But Linda, welcome to the podcast. Please say hello to the listeners and introduce yourself.
Awesome. Well, my name is Linda, and I participated with Sade in her program, and it was just amazing. So I think the biggest thing is, yes, I got a boyfriend for Christmas, and it was so exciting. So I look forward to the podcast, because working with Sade was just so helpful in my dating journey and finding an amazing man.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. And I wanted to start with just your thoughts about dating when you started, because I think I love your story so much because often I'm working with women who've dated for a while and they've had certain experiences and the experiences aren't usually good. And so a lot of the work I'm doing, and we worked one-on-one for 6 months. A lot of the work I'm doing with women is sort of like unlearning the bad experiences they had with dating, and then, starting over. And with you, I had like the absolute joy and delight of working with you, like from day one.
Yes.
Tell the listeners kind of like where you were when you reached out to me, and why did you want to coach? Like where were you in your journey after your divorce and dating, and why did you get a coach?
Correct. So a little bit of background, I was married for 30 years and divorced in 2019. So, prior to that, I hadn't dated in many, many, many years. So
you were married for 30 years, like a long time.
Yeah. It was a long, long time. And so after my divorce, I did date organically a couple of men initially. And then I got in a relationship with a man for 2 years. And he was a wonderful, wonderful man. It was really a rebound relationship. I stayed a little bit longer than I should have. But, he taught me how the kind of love that I really deserved. I had been in an abusive marriage prior to this. So that was all new to me. But after I ended that relationship, and he was a great guy, I just wasn't in love with him. I knew that I had to get on the dating apps, and I was terrified. So I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? And one of my girlfriends mentioned your name, and I had thought about getting a coach. And I knew if I did the dating apps, I wanted to do it right. And I wanted guidance. And I wanted a coach, a counselor, someone to help me with that process. I'm very high energy. I work out. I have a business. I'm a nurse. I do consulting. So I wanted to be on the dating apps, do it efficiently, hopefully find somebody and then get off them. And so it's high energy. So we initially met, and then I knew that was the decision I was going to make. I needed guidance along the way, and it was one of the best decisions I've made.
Yeah. And I love that you would use the word efficient, because that's kind of like it's one of my values. I'm always trying to figure out the fastest way to do something. And I try to bring that into the dating process as much as possible, because I think there's like a huge narrative that really slows it down for a lot of people. There's a lot of games and don't do this and do that comes into it, that creates a whole lot of anxiety. So I know we both resonated on all right, we want to get it done. We want to do it right. And we wanted to take the shortest amount possible. Like you said, you did the work. And I was just always so delighted by how you took to the process. It was just okay, this is what I do next. All right, let's do that. And even though you have a busy schedule, you travel for work, you run your own business, you have family that you care for, you have older your parents are, aging. And so you were visiting family and doing all of these things, and you have a vibrant social life.
Right.
Right. And so all of these things were in place, but you made room for the work and did it. And so I think that really was the bottom line, what I noticed made this work so well for you within the time frame that we had hoped. You met him, I believe, right around 4.5 months
Correct.
into the journey. Yeah. So, all right. But before we get to all of the good stuff,
Okay.
let's talk about the very beginning. One of the things, like when I went back through our notes, you had one of our sessions, you had anxiety about just the sheer number of messages you got on one of the apps. Like, I think you joined Our Time, and would you tell the listeners how old you are now?
I'm 63.
Yeah. So we felt like Our Time would be an app that might be useful for you, Bumble, Match.
Right.
And so I think the first one you signed up for was Our Time.
Yes. And I didn't stay on that one.
Right.
Because I'm a younger 63. I was like, oh my gosh. But I did feel that app was a little bit, the men they were much older. I just felt that. So I didn't stay on that for that. I think
we didn't even get a chance to like see who was on there because there was just a large number of messages. Yes. And I mentioned that because a lot of women feel overwhelmed by messages when they're on the apps and they don't know how to respond. It creates a whole lot of anxiety. And then that anxiety feels exhausting. Not because they've actually like processed the messages or actually gone through it, but just the sheer, I think when I went through our notes, we talked about how it feels like you are this one person and then there's like 1,000 guys surrounding you at one time. So how did you resolve just that anxiety around the number of people that were on the apps who were interested?
Well, I wasn't on Our Time. I got off that and went on Bumble and Match. And I found those they were just more friendlier for me. I just navigated them better. But I just found your process of, I had a process where if they reached out to me, I would look at their profile and they had similar values, I would reach out to them, and I always would do a call first. I would never just meet somebody in person right away. So I felt like I would text on the app a little bit. We would text back and forth. And then I would initiate, I wouldn't text more than 4 or 5 days or whatever. I say, let's talk offline. So we would talk offline. And then, if our conversations went well and I felt comfortable with it, then I would move to the next step of, meeting in person. And I wouldn't skip any of those steps. Even if someone on the app said, hey, let's just meet up, I would be like, no. And I think that was very helpful because you get to weed out. And most of the guys that I really communicated with on the app or met in person were wonderful men. I mean, they were wonderful men. I don't think before I met my boyfriend, he was about number 20. And so I didn't meet anybody that I was very uncomfortable with. They just weren't my flavor. They weren't my match, and and once I realized that after 1 day or 2 dates, or maybe even 3 dates, then, I would end it, but always being very nice about it and complimenting them. But, I wasn't going to drag on anything because I know in the past I've stayed in relationships before that were not for me. And that was something that I wanted to get out of, not repeat.
Yeah. And I love that you did a really great job with the weeding out, which is a huge part because I think when we tolerate, and I think a lot of women, we're just groomed to tolerate like guys, not make them mad, not make them angry, not say no. And I think that creates a lot of anxiety where women then drag things out longer. And that's what creates the exhaustion. Right. And I remember you and I crafted how you were going to let guys go. Right. I remember that being a little bit of a thing because you didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings.
Yes, I didn't want to hurt anyone's. Well, I always was very respectful with it, but just, basically just saying is, I don't feel we were a match, and I wish you all the best wishing you all the best. Yeah. But I think one of the most important things that I would like to tell the listeners is it's so essential that you also work on, I'm working with you, but you also done the work prior to this or working on yourself. So you can put the best person out there and know what you want. And you helped with that process as well. Going through the lists of the qualities and your values and what you're looking for in a man. So I think it's very important, number one, to know yourself and to really have healed. And that's essential because you don't want to repeat your mistakes. And when you're healed and you're healthy and you're happy from within, that will show on the outside, and that will gravitate and bring good people into you as well.
Yes, 100%. And actually that brings me to like your profile, because when we worked on your profile, it was very specific for the kind of man that you wanted, right? I don't know if you remember. Right. At this point, you're like, what, 5 months in now into your relationships?
Yes, almost 6 months. This month.
Yeah, yes. So I'm taking you way back.
Oh, I know. I can't remember that far.
Yeah. So I remember your profile, we targeted it to really meet someone that had the same values with you. And I remember you wanted someone who was active, like physically active, who was a person of faith,
right?
Who had conservative values. Music was a big one because
I love music and dancing. So that was, they didn't have to, be a dance, go out and enjoy dancing. But I think, like you said, for me, I have like my 4 F's that helped me through the really difficult times at the end of my marriage, through my divorce. And I continue to follow them today, are faith, family, friends, and fitness. So those are my values. And I look for those values in the person that I was going to date. I mean, faith is number one. My boyfriend and I go to church together, and that's very, very important to me. So my faith, and then having a healthy lifestyle. I mean, it's not just healthy physically, but like how you eat and just, who you hang around with. And I think, health is not just being active, but it's your diet and also having healthy mindset and soul and all that. So
yeah. And I love, you always worked to keep up, even when things were a little bit hard. You were always stretching yourself to get back to a positive mindset about dating.
Right.
You were like, I know a positive mindset is important. So how do I maintain one throughout? And so I think that's definitely one thing you showed throughout the process, was keeping a positive mindset. Did you ever, and I know there were times when, we worked through things, but were you ever like discouraged, like during those 4.5, 5 months before you met your partner? Was there a moment where you were like, oh my God, this isn't working, or I don't know if this is going to work?
I don't, I discouraged, maybe a little bit hard, but I'm sure that there were days where you're tired. You're just tired from work. And then, oh gosh, I have to do a call tonight. And I'm really, how do I be energetic? I have to look nice tonight or whatever, go out. But most of the times I tried to keep a really positive mindset, just because I'm pretty task and goal oriented. And this, like, I want someone in my life. Like, I have too much to give. And it's not like getting in a relationship and taking from somebody. It's really the love that I have to give to somebody. But you need to find the right guy. And yes. I think, and then also your weekly talks helped me. It was always good to see you. And I think you're very positive. And so having that support, I think it was essential, because I don't think I could have done this on my own. I don't think I needed the guidance. I'm a medical nurse consult. I don't know dating, to how to consult on it. So I needed someone to guide me. We all need probably different coaches in our lives at different points. And that's what I've realized. We don't know it all. We need help in life.
A lot of what I did, as I was going through the notes preparing for today, a lot of what I did really was just normalizing the things that you were experiencing.
Yes.
Like you would be like, well, this guy, I remember there was one I saw in the notes, the guy had sent you a kissy face. Like when you started texting, and you were like, is this normal? Like, what is happening here?
I know. Yeah, I do. I was like turned off, because that was like, that's a little like much right now. I don't even know if I talk to him or anything. So, you could sort of sense, and I think when you do the work, and like I had been in a narcissistic relationship, so I sort of knew also, some behaviors that there were more red flags, than green flags. And I tried to listen to my intuition as well, and then listen to your guidance. And I think I asked you a couple of times, is this appropriate or not, or whatever? And you're like, no, get
rid of that guy.
Get rid of him. And I'm like, really? Okay. All right. But
it wasn't necessarily because of the behaviors, because everyone's values are different.
Correct.
we did that upfront self-discovery work, that upfront your ideal partner. So it was very clear that your guy would not do certain things. Just
Correct.
right from the beginning. So that clarity,
right.
I think, served you really, really well, that you were able to get very clear and you weren't afraid to own what you wanted. I love that about you. You're like, this is what I want. I don't care if anybody else likes it. This is what
But I think that's very important. And I think as women, and when you're in an unhealthy relationship, you put your needs, they're not even there anymore, or I lost myself. So, over the last 3 or 4 years, I found myself again and done a lot of work. So there's no way that I'm not going to be myself and then express. And I'm always very respectful and I'm kind and I'm very loving, but I want them to know who I am and what I want and my values. And that's so important if you want a healthy relationship, to let them know that, because, if it's not going to work, I'd rather know sooner rather than later.
Yes. Yeah. So, and so like you said, you went on about 22, somewhere between 20 and 22 first dates. And over a period, and that's not counting the guys that you texted with, that you weeded out early.
Right.
There was some work and there was some effort that went into it. How did you manage your energy with, you have a busy life?
Right.
How did you shift your schedule? What changes did you need to make to accommodate this process?
Right. So I'm very fortunate that I have a lot of flexibility, with my work. So I was able, and I don't think I really went out on dates during the day. I went only out at night when I was done with my work and stuff like that. So I would make it easy. Someplace, usually I would have a place nearby and where I live, and I would only go out for an hour or so. And, but with communicating, I usually do it at the end of the day, and the conversations at most would be an hour or so. So, I think energy wise, I'm pretty high energy. I get up early, I work out. And so that really, to me, wasn't that much of a problem. I mean, I think sometimes my mindset, like you said, I was never discouraged, but you just got to keep focused on what you want to achieve. And I think with your guidance, there are so many great, like you say, there are so many great men out there, and there are great. So I would say, don't think that there's no good guys out there, because there's many good guys out there. You just got to find only one.
Yes.
And do the work, and we deserve the best. We deserve the best. And so I think that's so important.
Yeah. Was it worth it to go through? So just before the call, we were talking about all the different kinds of guys that you met along the way. And I think sometimes some women are afraid to encounter all the kinds of guys on the way to meeting their guy, right? So there was the one guy who you guys were close in compatibility, but he just wasn't 100% or 80% of what you wanted. And so you guys you're kind of friends now, but he wasn't the one. There was the guy that was a low energy guy that, you went on a couple of dates and you were like, oh my God, no, right? It wasn't terrible. He was a decent person.
No.
And then there was what we're calling the narcissist CEO guy.
But, going out with a lot of different guys is so healthy too, because you find out what you like, but you also find out and you confirm what you don't want. What you don't like. And that's almost as important as well. So I think, there's guys that I could connect with, but for some reason or another, I knew they weren't a match. And a lot of guys really aren't, they're on at dating apps, but they're not emotionally available. They're not ready to commit or to be present and to be involved and want to commit to a relationship. So when I met my boyfriend for the first time, we had a great we had talked, and it was unusual because we had talked for, a couple of weeks already. But the one thing I liked about him the first time I met him after our first date, he was like, well, when can I see you again? It's not like I'll give you a call. So that was wow. I loved that. That was awesome.
Yeah. You know what? Let's talk about him now. Let's stop talking about all the other guys.
Oh, sorry. I think I jumped
No.
ahead.
I'm not. But let's just segue right there.
Okay.
Like you said, you could tell he was emotionally available, which from what I'm hearing, that was very different from all the other. Was there anyone else who was sort of emotionally available along the way?
Well, I went on a date with about 4 or 5 dates with one gentleman, and we were very compatible. And he was a great guy. I didn't think he was the guy, but he wasn't emotionally available. Like, you know, you could tell it wasn't clicking. And then I just ended it after about four dates, just because I didn't feel like there was something, he wasn't ready. Like I think he was earlier in his healing process, and he didn't want to commit to anybody, which I totally respect, because he had been in an unhealthy divorce, and he hadn't had enough time on his own, I think.
Yeah. So like the 21 guys who were either avoidant, not wanting commitment, not available, and not appropriate, they weren't a problem. Like they weren't like, I think a lot of women see, well, I dated all these guys and they're terrible. That must mean my guy isn't out there. But your guy was like the 22nd.
Yes. Yeah. And I will say, all the guys, I never felt uncomfortable, but you know, I think my weeding process and the process that I went through, that you helped guide me through, really refined the men that I went out with. So that, you know, that helped me. The process helped me find good guys to date. And then out of those good guys, I find a person that is for me. So I didn't have, I mean, there was a couple of guys I was like, you know, but they were always polite, respectful. Nice. So the process works. I think you have to, it's work though. It is work, but you have to be committed to it, and it is worth it, because, you know, I can work all I want and do all the things I want on my own, but at the end, I want to be with a great guy. I mean, and so that's what life's all about. It's all about relationships.
It really is.
You have to put the work in, and I think it's so valuable to do.
Yeah. Let's talk about looks. Your boyfriend, how old is he?
He's a year older. He's 64.
He's 64. How tall is he?
He's 6'2". I know. It's great. 6'2" or 6'1".
And how tall are you? Because this is a big deal.
Me, I'm 5'6" or 5'5". Actually, 5'5" more so. I know.
So
I want a tall guy.
He's 6'2". And what about his hair?
Oh yeah, so I know, because that was always my thing with Sade. I was telling her, all these guys I were getting with shaved heads or bald or whatever, and they had no hair on their head, but like all facial hair. And I'm like, I just want a clean shaven guy with a lot of head of hair. And he has a gray head of hair, and he's salt and pepper hair, and he's clean shaven. He's cute.
Yes, he's exactly what you wanted. But I brought that up because I wanted to talk about the fact that you were open, like on the journey to meet him. When we had that conversation early on, and we were going over your ideal partner, and you had full head of hair and 6'2", and I was like, okay, sis, let's talk about this for a minute. And we talked about it. I kind of told you the origins of how we're programmed to want that, and how realistically you may or may not get, because those are things that a person cannot control. You could have the best human in the world, can't control the hair on his head, can't control his height. And you were open that if the right person came along in a different package, you were open to that.
Yes, absolutely. Because, you know, and with my boyfriend, and we talked a little bit longer, only because he had surgery on his foot. And then I was going to Florida to help with my parents for a little bit. So there was a longer gap than normally we had met. So we had talked for like 2 weeks, but I could tell like he was a carrot. What I love about him is his heart and his mind. He's smart. He's an engineer. I like a smart guy. I'm pretty intellectual and like to do a lot of different things. So I have a lot going on. So I wanted someone that was smart, but is his heart, you know? Really he's just so kind. So that's really a blessing.
Yeah. And so what app, I know people are going to want, ladies listening, it is not the apps that make the match, but I will let Linda share which app she met him on.
It was on Match.
On Match,
I found that to be the best. I don't know. It's user friendly.
The apps are all different. Like I met my husband on Bumble. Like I have clients who've met their person in person or through an introduction. Like I teach to use all the ways. Like you can use social media and social media networking. You can use meeting people in person and offline and the apps. And for you, the apps work really well just because you were busy and you didn't want to spend a lot of time, you know, in new places. So it really worked for you to like streamline who you were talking with. And did he ever tell you what he liked about your profile? Did you guys ever talk about that? I should have had
He did. Well, he said, oh, you take, so I had this, picture, one of my pictures was I was on a spin bike. And so, and I don't teach spin. They're like, do you teach spin? You know, they're like, but that was the thing that caught him was I was doing spin on a spin bike, and he likes to work out and stuff like that. And I think it was also my values, my faith, and that.
He's
but I think
he's even more active than you are, right? Like
he's pretty active. He's more of a mountain guy. What I like also, he's a mountain guy. I'm a beach girl, but I love the mountains. I ski. So it's sort of nice when we have same values, but some similar interests, but also some different interests. So I get to learn different things, and it makes the relationship more interesting, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you guys matched, he was having surgery. So there was like a week or two there, and then you were traveling. So there was another week before you could go on your first date.
Right.
Did you think he was the one when you were going on your first date? Like, I know you told me, I'm enjoying this conversation with this guy.
So
what were your thoughts?
Like, I didn't know. Well, I was very concerned because I was becoming attached to him. You can become attached talking, you know? And so that was a concern. I said, wow, I never talked this long. I was in Florida. That was after the hurricane. I was helping my parents. I came back, and so we had talked for like 2 weeks. I'm like, oh, I'm in trouble. If I don't like if I don't feel connected with him, we've already felt the connection. How do I deal with all that? So we made a reservation at a restaurant that I really liked close to me, and he was in a walking boot. And so he had Uber to the restaurant. I know. And so he was there already. He's very time efficient. Like, he's always there early. And I'm like, so I showed up, I could see, I was like looking through the door, you know, I'm like, oh my God, he's cute. Yeah, baby.
Yeah.
It's really the heart and all his persona. But, you know, I think for me, physical attraction is a part of it all. So, you know, it all worked out. And, you know, we had a great conversation. I didn't really I didn't know the first night. So then I said, oh, you don't have to Uber home. I'll drive you home, because he couldn't drive yet. And he's only 15 minutes away. So it was easy. But, and then he came to church with me on Sunday. That was Friday, came on Sunday. So it was great. He's very easy to talk to, like a really good communicator. He had done the work as well, which I think is very important. He had done some therapy, just going through the divorce, and he had been divorced for about 2 years. So a little bit less than myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know one of the things you had told me and we're going to get to like sort of how you moved from, okay, I've met this guy, he's great, to the commitment that you have now, which is almost 6 months in. You had said, kind of like when we were doing, like, there was that period after you started seeing him, you were seeing him more and more. And we get to that part where we start to talk about going exclusive, which is really like a 4 to 6 week period of considering a lot of things. And one thing you had told me about him as we just explored all the questions was, I feel really good about myself around him. Like I'm like the better version of myself, or best version of myself, something like that. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I think, you know, for women that have been in an abusive or toxic relationship, it's very, very challenging, and you lose yourself, and, you know, you don't feel good about yourself in that relationship. So I had worked very hard to get back to myself again and really feel good about myself. And just, you know, enjoying life and enjoy being who I am and my life and my family, et cetera. So when I'm with my boyfriend, I especially at first, it's very important for me to be in the present and just feel how I'm feeling, you know, feel my feelings, like not just be present and see how I'm feeling. And I've always felt very safe, very taken care of, and very comfortable. Like like I have very healthy boundaries with him, never pushed my boundaries, you know, and we mutually just really have good conversation and get to know each other. And like he said, like I brought out the best in him, and he would bring out the best in me. And, you know, I say, you're so kind, you know, oh my gosh, you know, and what he says to me is that you bring that out in me. Yeah. You know, so lovely. I think it's lovely. And, you know, there's all goodness inside. We got to find our good, heal ourselves, and then give that to others. And it's a blessing. I mean, I feel very grateful. You know, I feel very grateful.
I mean, really excited I've just been really delighted for you. But sort of going back to the work a little bit. So there was that period where you were like, I remember one of the questions you asked me was like, how do I know the difference between a man being intentional and love bombing? So there was some anxiety where it was like, oh my God, there's this really great guy here. How am I sure that it's right? I'm not falling for something. I'm not just like infatuated or just, and so we, even though we kept talking about, okay, you need to enjoy this, but on the other side, as you enjoy it, I think, and I don't know if you remember, we created opportunities for you to then observe and learn and ask the important questions. Yes. And that was a process as well. I think one of them was, we talked about church, like, okay, you need to go to his church, make sure he actually has a church. And people at his church know who he is, and he didn't just make it up, because anyway, I don't want to go into all the ones, because I think I don't know if it was you or another client of mine who, there's some guys who are perpetually new in town. So they are all the things you want, but they're new in town, so you can't verify anything,
Right.
Not that every guy who's new in town is actually like that, but,
Correct.
It's really about whatever situation you're in, seeing, okay, how do you observe this person in their own habitat, in their life, and create opportunities to really get to know him. It's like, don't just trust what he says, but verify and have conversations around that. And that was one of the things you did, was take a class together. Right. And we talked about like not always going out on the romantic dates, but even other dates and other more simpler things. What are some of the other things that you did outside of like going out to dinner and just sitting and, being in a romantic atmosphere?
Well, we're pretty active, and my boyfriend does a lot of different things. I just think even just walking and talking, we did going to church is a big thing. We did go out to dinner a lot, or we still do. We could go to different athletic events and stuff, but also just spending time together. And I remember you saying this, and I learned this also, is very important to match his words with his behavior. He says he's going to do something for me or something like that, or he's doing this or whatever, but his words were always followed up with the correct behavior. And I thought that was very, very good. And that was very healthy for me to see. But I think, just spending time together, we'll watch a movie or something like that, or
you did I remember you did a happy hour.
Yes. And I did have yes. So one thing I also observed is I'm pretty social. So I had a happy hour. I had a party at my place, and I had some of my friends, and he didn't know anybody, but he just comes over. He helped me put up Christmas decorations and stuff like that. And he just interacted and engaged with my friends. So I thought that was very healthy. Like he's social too, but also I think he recharges a little bit like I do on my own. But he was able to go into an environment where he didn't really know anybody and communicate and have good conversation, helps out. And he's very appropriate socially. So that was something for me that I observed. And he's also interacted with my family members and stuff like that. So I find that in the beginning, it's a lot of observation, and listening.
Yes. And then in different situations, and as things progressed, it was like, okay, you need to see him around this person. You need to see him around that person. Right. Like have this conversation, the conversation about money. How do you progressively have that? Conversations about porn and sex and relationship timelines, like all of those things had to get woven in slowly in an appropriate, in an appropriate way. And I mean, you did a good job. And I think a lot of it, like you said, you had already done the work to be able to recognize a healthy relationship. So you were not lowering your standards.
Correct.
At any point in time. I think I remember even when you were a bit nervous about bringing something up, you always had the courage to do it. If, we talked in a coaching session and we said, okay, this is the next step. Even if you were nervous about it, you always found the courage to, do what you knew was the safest thing, was going to lead you to a healthy relationship.
Correct. And, I think that's very important, Sade, because in the past, when I was married and it became very unhealthy, I wouldn't bring things up. I'd be scared to. And right there, that tells you it's very unhealthy. But with my boyfriend, I said, I'm not going to go down that path, even if it's, I'm just getting to know him, but I'll bring up some things. And it was very healthy for me because it gave me more confidence in myself. and he got to learn more about who I am. And he respected that more. Like the one thing he says, that he respects my values. And, I like that. We're both, I think there's a lot of respect between both of us. And I think that's essential, a lot of respect, because, it's okay to bring up it's very important to bring up difficult topics. It's hard, but if you don't bring them up, they'll come up in an unhealthy way later on.
Yeah.
You don't want that.
Yeah. 100%. So just going down your timeline, I think we're just going to wrap up with just like the commitment phase and where you guys are now, and then I'll let you give them all the advice. So I believe you went exclusive at the end of December.
It was about the end of December. So it was quicker than I thought. I think my boyfriend brought it up a little bit early, and I was like,
yeah, I think you met him in October.
My match subscription's not expired yet.
Yeah. I believe you met him in October. So it was about 8 weeks.
Yes.
6 to 8 weeks.
I felt, and there was a point at the end, I was like, yeah, I'm going to get off my match. It's expiring. I wanted to get off anyway. I think when you get a point when you have a relationship, and when you feel like it's possibly the one, you're ready. I was, after 8 weeks, I was ready to get off and go exclusive and commit my time and my energy, my heart to my boyfriend. You get to that point. And so
yes,
he was a little bit earlier than I was. It took me about 2 or 3 more weeks, because I just was probably a little bit more cautious.
Well, yeah. And I think that's the process that I, advocate that women go through, is just to be a little slower. It's okay. Be a little more assertive about the pace you're comfortable with, and not being afraid to lose the person. Right. And I think that's where having that feedback, where it's like, am I going too slow? Am I going too fast? And double checking, because literally all I do is like, I just ask questions about, well, what do you know? Do you know enough?
Right.
Do you not know enough? What do you still need to know? Because some women will drag it out because they're not asking the questions. There's things they need to know, but they're not courageous enough to ask the questions. So then it gets dragged out, and then they run the risk of losing the person. So it's like, no. If this is what you need to know, then let's make it happen so you can make a decision about that. And then since then, you've been working on commitment, like just the work of the commitment and what it's going to look like. For the both of you going forward. Can you talk a little bit about kind of like the work you've done there and what it looks like for you?
Sure. So we, committed to be in an exclusive relationship at the end of 2022. So, we've talked about living together. We both live about 20 minutes apart. I rent because I have a home in Florida, but I rent currently where I'm living now. And he owns a place which he'll eventually sell. But we're talking about like sometime in the summer, early fall, living together. And I would do that first before, taking any next step, because I think, we both have, many, many years of life behind us, and then it's incorporating that life. And then, when you live together, you find other things, I'm sure, but, we're both pretty compatible. But there's always going to be things that come up. But I will say one thing is, when you're in a healthy relationship, conversations and dealing and bringing things up, it's much an easier conversation than having a conversation, as with like a narcissist. I would never get anything resolved. With my boyfriend, I feel I can bring something up in a matter of a couple of minutes. It's resolved and you move on. So I think that's very healthy.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You've been doing the work of like talking about what that relationship timeline looks like, when you might move in together, when you might commit further, meeting family members. A lot of that's been going on.
Yes, that's always stressful. My kids are all older, and so is his. But still, it's like, oh my gosh,
it's new.
Oh, there's my mom's, 60-some years old, bringing her boyfriend.
Your kids
I never get used to it. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but they were all delighted. I'm so it sounded like they all just really wanted you to be happy.
Yes. My kids, they just want to see, and like most kids, they just want to see their parents happy.
Yeah.
And they're living their own lives,
100%. And you guys have had to talk about finances.
Yes.
And like what that might look like in the future, talking to some professionals around assets and things like that. So there's been work along the way. At all the stages. I think sometimes we have I just meet the guy, and then like the heavens open and it's all good, right?
I know it's great work. It's fun work, especially when you have a healthy relationship. It's great.
Right.
So.
And you had to do the work while you guys was like, how many times a week do you guys go out now? Like,
well, I see him probably 6 or 7 times a day. But we go out like periodically, or we worked out, like I did a spin class with him this morning at 5:45.
Nice.
So
oh my God.
I know.
Yeah.
It's a great way to start the day.
Yeah. So I just wanted to kind of acknowledge you for like doing that. You did the work of meeting him. You did the work of enjoying the relationship and spending time together and having fun, but also the second layer of work of like, you're not just being romantic and dating, but you're also making sure you're having the conversations that would lead to a commitment, down the line, the conversations about boundaries, blending, all of those good things. So awesome. You're like the epitome of like doing the work. Like, you're like my poster child client for like,
oh gosh. Well, I always work, so that's the problem. So,
but without over functioning, I think.
Yes,
that's one of the healthy things you did was you always put in the work into yourself and into your process, and you never over functioned with any of the guys. You never tried to save any of them or accommodate any of that stuff, because
so
you did way too much of that in the past.
Yes. So that's I think self-care for women and taking care of themselves. And, when you take care of yourselves, you have so much more to give to others. And self-care is not selfish. It's essential in a really healthy relationship. So, I'm a big believer of that. We need to take care of ourselves so we can give to others. So.
We do. I just want to congratulate you on finding forever love. And
amazing.
Falling in love, being willing to try again. And I'm really just so happy for you. Just so proud of the work that you've done.
Thank you.
I'm just going to open it up for you to just tell the listeners just anything you'd like them to know about dating, something you learned, something you think more women should know or do, or even about divorce, whatever comes to your heart, like that you think the listeners need to hear.
I think it's essential that, as I said earlier, I'm sort of repeating this, but I think it's so important, really do the work on yourself. And, whether you hire a coach, whether you do it, I did mine through a 12-step through church, but it's so important to work on yourself and know who you are first, because you need to know who you are before you go out and date. It's so important. And there's this one saying, and I have it written down. I did it in my testimony when I went through, is you need to heal yourself so you don't bleed onto others that didn't cut you. So I think, I know you do some counseling along those lines, or coaching, I think, along those lines too. I think you really want to be in a healthy relationship. So you need to have a healthy self first, and then hire a coach. Like you don't want to be on the dating apps forever. And I think with your process, it helps weed out the people that you wouldn't be, a match for you. And you get a good group of guys to date and to choose from. So I think it's an amazing process. It is a lot of work, but it's so worth it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being willing to come on and share.
I'll sure follow up with you again.
Absolutely. We're going to be talking. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone, for your time and attention today. Appreciate Linda for being here, and we will see you next time.